So guten Morgen, Stefan.
Yeah, danke schön. Thanks.
So to surprise you all, we're going to conduct this session in German. Stefan is from Germany, so we'll just to make it interesting. I hope that's okay with everyone. So I'm just kidding. I only know 2 words in Germany, guten Morgen. So we'll come back to
sure.
English, and friends, colleagues. Today in our session we're going to spend time learning about PPRO, an organization that Stefan represents. He's the Chief Strategy and Growth Officer there, and PPRO is doing a lot of unique, interesting, and relevant stuff in today's time and age. And we're going to spend next half an hour learning about PPRO, about how Stefan feels on the digital trends, what are his views on India and collaboration with NPCI, NPCI International, and I think it's going to be a very, very interesting conversation. So, Stefan, let me start by asking about PPRO. Like, what's the secret behind the name PPRO? Is it an acronym, or is it something that you would like to talk about?
Yeah, there's no secret behind it. Payment professionals, right? And at some point in time, I think we thought we have to change the name, but we never got to it, right? And so the company is existing now for 10 years, and we still call ourselves PPRO. So no secret source, right?
So give us a bit of an overview around PPRO, the business model that PPRO deploys, and who are the key institutions behind PPRO in the current frame?
So we're solving actually a super important problem, right? So we're giving access to roughly 150 local payment methods across the world, right? So our customers, PPRO customers, are payment service providers, are banks, are fintechs, right? That want to give merchants the ability that consumers can pay with the payment method they prefer, right? And that's really the problem we're solving since 10 years. We have roughly 150 local payment methods or alternative payment methods on our network, right? On the one side of our network, on the other side, roughly 120 PSPs that are working with us, right? And why is this important, right? I always get asked, why is this important? Yeah, because we as consumer have personal preferences, right? And each of us wants to pay with their preferred payment method. And not only that I have a German passport, I also have an American passport. And in the beginning, it was hard to explain to my American friends, right? If you think about global e-commerce, only 25% of global e-commerce is done with international credit cards, right? 75% of global e-commerce is done with alternative or local payment methods. And they are different, right? They're market specific, right? And if you reflect yourself, if you reflect all our behavior, right, we trust actually a payment method more than we're trusting the merchant, right? That's the reason why we want to stick to our preferred payment method, right? And to solve this, right, to get access to 150 payment methods, for sure there's complexity to solve underneath. From a PPRO point of view, not only that we're doing the transaction processing, we are also solving for the settlement. And to do this, we have roughly 450 bank accounts across the globe in 35 markets, so that we can help our merchants that come via our payment service providers or banks to settle the money that comes from the consumer. And the reason why, as I mentioned earlier, why the importance is even increasing through the pandemic, right? Because I think we all learned to shop cross-border, right? And that's another element, right, where local payment methods play an important role. Cross-border is the new normal. I think we get through this throughout this talk. And from this point of view, if a merchant wants to do business in a certain market, he has to offer these local payment methods. Otherwise, he will lose out on quite some revenue opportunities. And maybe to frame PPRO, because you were asking, Ritesh, 10 years in existing, we are roughly 600 people in the meantime, 12 offices across the globe, and really backed by major investors, right? We have major private equity investors, and particularly we are proud of having 3 strategic investors as part of our shareholder base. So PayPal is one of our investors, Citi is an investor, and JP Morgan Chase is an investor in our company. And they're doing this on purpose, right? Because they understand that local payment methods are important to drive business, and that's the reason why they invested in the company, because they wanted a company that solves the complexity for them.
So some big names there, Citibank, JP Morgan, yeah. And you also highlighted some very, very interesting facts, right, that you connect with the 150 plus, payment providers, and more than 70% of the, e-commerce is happening from alternate payments. So tell us more about your views on the digital commerce evolving globally. What are the trends that you see? What are the opportunities, existing use cases, new use cases? It'll be good for us to know.
So clearly, I think e-commerce is growing significantly, despite the fact that, for sure, if you think about the latest data, the growth was a bit of a rise, right? But e-commerce overall still grows between 10 and 15%, depending on the markets, right? But the more important part, coming back to the earlier comment, is cross-border is actually growing more than 20%, right? I think we'll all experience this. I need to admit, I think I joined PPRO 4 years ago, and in the beginning I was struggling with cross-border e-commerce, right, personally, right? And as I mentioned, I have a US passport and a German passport. I was living in Silicon Valley for quite some time, and my daughter in San Francisco was shopping in London. I never understood it, why she has to shop in London, why she can't get the stuff in San Francisco, right? And if I think about how my behavior changed in the pandemic, right, where we all went to these large marketplaces, right, where we even didn't bother, right, where the merchant was located, right, where we looked for a seamless type of experience, and suddenly we are all cross-border shoppers, right? And I had to revise my discussion with my daughter, and I said, okay, Julia, I'm a cross-border shopper now as well, right? And I think we all became cross-border shoppers. So if you think about e-commerce overall, high teens, right, or the mid-teens, right, cross-border even stronger, particularly driven through all these marketplaces, right? What is very obvious, and we have actually proof points, and this comes back to from a merchant point of view, you have to offer these alternative payment methods, right? Because coming back, and I want to make a comment from one of our shareholders, right? Because again, I think these are the safeguards from a consumer point of view. As I was shopping cross-border, while in the US, right, if a merchant didn't offer PayPal, the PayPal wallet, I didn't shop with the merchant, right? Because I didn't want to disclose my credit card information to a merchant I haven't heard about, right? I don't know where the merchant is located. Right, so really the payment scheme, the local payment scheme is my safeguard, right? You wondering why PayPal invested in the company. Actually, the chief strategist of PayPal at some point told me, look, PayPal is actually a security company that happens to be in payments, right? So that's how they position themselves, right? And it's exactly how I'm using the PayPal wallet, right? I trust PayPal, right? Like people in India trust UPI, right? You trust your payment method, and from this perspective, I think you're willing to shop with a merchant you don't know, right? So that's an important part of cross-border. Another fact I want to highlight in terms of what we're seeing around e-commerce, in terms of what's happening, we see proliferation, right? You will see much more local payment methods evolving. And it's fascinating to see, right? I think one of these categories, for example, is buy now, pay later. If I reflect, I think 3 years ago, maybe in the Western world, we had 10 major ones. In the meantime, you have between 30 and 40, and you have a growing number. So proliferation of payment methods, right? And it's very simple, right? Because these payment methods can be very personalized to a specific market, to a specific user group, right? And that's the reason, I think, why they're not going away. And the second thing, I think we're seeing what is all important for us as shoppers, right? You see, I think that the regulatory framework is increasing, right? And I see it actually positive, right? For sure, we're a regulated entity, and we have to deal with the regulatory bodies. But I see it positive because at the end, I think if you think about what's the role of a regulator, it's really to make sure that the relationship between the consumer and the merchant works out, and the money that's supposed to come into the merchant's bank account actually ends up there at the end, right? So complexity is increasing, proliferation is increasing. Right? What is actually good for our model at PPRO, right? Right now, as I mentioned, I think we have roughly 150 payment methods on our platform. We believe, I think, if I think about the next 2-3 years out, probably I think this will increase to roughly between 300 and 350 that are relevant across various markets across the globe.
I think the space is evolving very fast. And earlier we were talking about how some consumers go to a shop, get a feel of the product, and then come order online. Some check it online and then go and buy it from a retail store. And I think you kind of connected with these concepts by talking about Julia and your daughter.
Correct.
She's 27 years old.
Correct.
In India, the median age is 28 years old. So and we are a country of 1.4 billion. 1.2 billion people are connected to internet using mobile. 70% have smartphones. So what are your views on India as a market, as a consumer base for some of these 150 payment methods that you kind of are connecting on the other side?
And I think India, and this is really, I think, also the relationship we are creating right now is super important, right? So we have, again, I think we have roughly 120 PSPs on our platform right now, and really brand names of the industry, the Stripes of the world, the PayPals, the JP Morgans, the Citis, the Mollys, with roughly 1.2 million merchants behind, right? And if you think about what happened over the last 2-3 years in particular, driven as an inflection point by COVID, right? We have lots of merchants that want to sell to Indian consumers, right? And they fully understand that you only can sell to Indian consumers if you offer the right payment methods, right? And this comes back to this localization, correct? Yeah, correct. So I think from this point of view, with the sheer number, right? India is a super important market for our PSPs, right? They're asking for the merchants behind, as well as for us as a company. And from this point of view, Ritesh, I'm super excited that we have the strategic partnership and building the infrastructure that then can be utilized by the industry.
I think you're absolutely bang on. And if you look at some of the things that have really worked for us in last few years, one is UPI as a platform. It today is one of the most scaled up fast payment platform in the world, and then our digital ID program called Aadhaar. So I think with these two we have a good combination going on. And when you talk of India, it's very, very difficult to miss NPCI and the role NPCI has played. And we often in the organization we say that NPCI is in such a position today that we touch lives of most Indians on a daily basis. So what are your thoughts about the possibilities that our partnership would kind of create in terms of opportunities, and how do you see this evolving in near future?
No, first of all, really, I think it's the right approach, right? What India is doing also with NPCI, right? If you think about it on a micro scale, right? We have an important partner in Europe. It's Ideal, right? It's the Netherlands, right? That has something similar, right? Not exactly, I think, what India had created with NPCI, but fairly similar, right? And the result out of in the Netherlands is very simple. 65% of e-commerce is done via Ideal, right? What would be an UPI equivalent in the Netherlands, right? And why is this, right? Yeah, because I think it's a seamless integration. It's a deeply entrenched user experience, right? From a consumer point of view, that leads then by the end of the day to the decision of a consumer to use this as a payment method, right? So if I'm talking to our team, in all transparency, I said, look, what we're doing here in India is actually what we have done with the Netherlands, right, on a much smaller scale, and the magnitude of the opportunity I think we jointly have together is much, much bigger, right? Not only because I think the country is much bigger and there are much more people linked to it, but also I think this entire e-commerce involved, right? And I think we all went through COVID, and I think even as I mentioned earlier, I shop now cross-border, or I shop, right? E-commerce, I really don't care where the merchant sits, right? So lots of things have changed, and from this perspective, I'm super excited. As I mentioned, our partners are excited, our shareholders are excited, as well as our partners, right? Our PSP partners, because there are merchants that want to sell towards Indian consumers.
Thank you. So Stefan, some very, very interesting facts that we learned today. One is you PPRO connecting to 150 payment methods, Citi, JP Morgan being the force behind PPRO as a brand, and 70% alternate payment methods, and all this I think is culminating into PPRO growing exponentially that it is. And you being the Chief Strategy and Growth Officer, I'm sure you're closest to the kitchen, or you are in the kitchen actually, if one can say. So what's the secret behind this exponential growth? This, maybe there are a few things that we can learn, and we have a lot of fintech partners as well as other payment partners here in the audience. So would you like to unveil some of it?
No, for sure. Maybe to step back a bit, right? The reason why I joined PPRO, because I heard about this value proposition and I was super excited. And the reason why I was super excited, because at some point in time of my career, I worked for HP. And I worked for HP at a time as an internet bookstore called Amazon, right? Decided I changed the compute industry, and data centers are not necessary anymore. Everything moves into the cloud, right? And you can imagine, right, for the people that are a bit older, like me, I think it was hard to believe, right? And again, I think Amazon was very different 15, 16, 17 years ago than it is today, right? And the reason why I joined PPRO, because I said, okay, that's the same thing will happen in payments, right? I mentioned earlier, Ritesh, I think payments is getting more complex, right? There's proliferation, right? So from this point of view, there is a need for an infrastructure play, right? For an infrastructure layer that PPRO is providing with payment methods on the one side and PSP partners or fintechs or banks on the other side, right? Because the model of the past was actually that lots of these payment service providers, Stripe or PayPal, right? They integrated these local payment methods directly into their platform, right? And that's possible, right? If you only need a handful, right? But think about right now, we're talking about 150 that's sitting on our platform. We believe, I think, to be fully covered around the globe, we need 350, right? It's super complex, right? So I think from this point of view, I think I'm super excited because I know that the model I think we're providing, right, from a strategy point of view makes sense, right? Because our partners want to focus on value creation, right, and stuff that really matters compared to an infrastructure layer that they can buy from from PPRO. One comment. Second comment why I'm excited, I think is really the opportunities that evolved over the last couple of quarters and couple of years, right, after COVID, in terms of corridors where shopping takes place, right? And also relevant for Indian consumers, I think one of the key corridors we are opening up right now, also with the help of some of our shareholders, is the US. The US is not easy. As a market, because you need 50 licenses, right? It's not that you need one license for the United States, you need 50 licenses, so the license is always a big problem, in particular for smaller companies like ours. We are fortunate to have a major US bank as part of our shareholder group, and actually JP Morgan Chase will sponsor us as a license sponsor for the state. So I'm super excited about the US, and I think that's also relevant for India because it's a big corridor, right? We are very strong in Europe, yeah, so the entire European market. Another area, and this is the reason also why I'm excited about our relationship is Asia for sure. We acquired a company just recently, I think, with an office in Melbourne, right, with 25 people. So Australia is an important market for us going forward. We applied for a license in Singapore. We're in the process of a Singapore license right now, but it's an important part we need to branch out. So really, I think from a strategy point of view, we want to make it as simple as possible, right, for our partners, right, integrating into our platform with one API, with one connection, and then having the opportunity to access all the local payment methods that are sitting behind, right? So this is the key thing, right? In addition, I believe the opportunities for us to expand from a portfolio point of view. Right now, for sure, a bulk of the PPRO business is coming out of digital payment methods or local payment methods building this. I think there are opportunities in particular around risk, right, and risk management and compliance management, as well as funds flow management, right? I think we were all in a very artificial situation that money was pretty much for free. The last 2 years, this is changing. Interest rates are rising, right? And there's a difference if you get a settlement today, tomorrow, or next week, right? And I believe, I think this is something strategically we are focused on, because we believe, I think that it's important for merchant, it's important for PSP, and so we're building infrastructure layers that help with funds flow management, as well as help with the increasing complexity, what I mentioned earlier, what is in principle good for all of us as consumers, right, around the regulatory framework in terms of risk and compliance, where I believe, I think we can be a support organization for the schemes on the one side, as well as for our PSP partners and merchants on the other side.
So if what I gathered is that the secret is that you deal with the complexity.
Correct.
And you connect, payment methods with the consumers and ensure compliance. So I think 3 C's, if I can say: complexity, you kind of do away with, you connect both sides, merchants and consumers, and you ensure compliance. If I think that's really, I think these are 3 things that anybody in the payment ecosystem would look for. So I think thank you for that. Now, one final question from my side. That would be, before you joined PPRO, I think you were working with an ATM manufacturer, right?
Yeah.
So from a very, very cash-driven world, how does it feel to be transitioning to a very, very digital world? I think it's a story that all of us would be interested in. I think a lot of us have worked with banks here in a very, very cash-dominant environment, and now we are into a very, very digitally savvy and digitally connected world. So I think, but you have seen it all. So
no, I've seen it all, right? I think I have 2 major experiences that drive me, as well as I think, or influenced me, and also I think made me to join PPRO. First of all, HP, right? And this is where I was sitting on the wrong side of the table. I always tell investors that I was sitting on the wrong side of the table. This time I'm sitting on the right side of the table in terms of really providing this infrastructure layer. And then I was part of the managing board of Diebold Nixdorf for 5 years, right? And saw the change from a physical world into a digital world, right? And for sure, I think while it takes time, over time, and for sure it's also generationally in terms of how you approach certain things, right? The acceleration, the speed is unbelievable. Never thought about that this would accelerate in such a pace, right? And I can even see it with myself. I can see it with my mother is 80 years old. Even my mother's shopping with e-commerce, right? And she's using a local payment method in Germany, right? Because she trusts her bank and her local payment method, right? And even she's shopping e-commerce, right? So I think this will continue, and I think it will continue to the benefit of all of us, right? Because the user experience is something very different, right? And that's the reason why younger people jumping on it, why buy now, pay later schemes are so interesting, in particular for younger people, because it's a very, very different user experience in your app compared to some of the old technology. So from this point of view, I'm super excited, right, with my experience to sit really on the right side of the table to help to drive this, because I believe it will benefit not only merchant, it will benefit us as consumers, right? Because again, I think it's the safety net, the payment method, right? I believe that will lead to invisible payments. It will lead to a very personalized shopping experience. I think we all want. Right, and at the end, I think we also have to be clear. It drives also financial inclusion from a macroeconomic point of view. I think it would be foolish to believe, and maybe some Americans believed it in the past, that countries will come into the financial system via a Visa or a MasterCard credit card. Now they're coming into the financial system via all kind of local payment methods. From this point of view, I'm super excited. I'm super excited about our partnership and this prospect. Again, I think, as I mentioned, our partners, our merchants are excited about opening up the Indian market. And I think it's good for all of us.
Thank you, Stefan. Now, with permission from the organizers, if we can open it up, if you're okay, for a few questions from audience here. So friends, we have Stefan. He's a guru in digital payments. If any one of you, want to ask a question, please, feel free. We can take a couple of questions if any. Yeah, please.
I am Praveen from Jhatpat Pay. I am TSP for NPCI, implementing FASTag acquiring nationally. So my question is 2 questions. One is technical, second is license. So I have worked for European Central Bank, ECB, Frankfurt, Germany, and I coded the interoperable platform. Now NPCI has the best interoperable platform which does not exist in Europe even in today. That is something India has a credibility. Okay. And I am telling openly that we are the first country in the world to develop an interoperable platform. The challenge here is that which I face working in Germany, working in India, the European products are promoted, sold in India, but the best product of interoperable developed by NPCI in the Indian market is not yet accepted to Europe or America. So I am talking about the reverse sales. If a big market is given to Europeans, why not the European American market is given to the Indians when they have the best technology? That is one question in terms of technology. So, and in terms of licenses, I understand it is complexity in fintech, as I have coded for European bank sitting in Frankfurt. Now ECB exists. So one common license like NPCI can be given so that the Indian company can work in different countries. There are 25 countries, Euro members, where that license can work. So is it that possibility? So these are 2-3 questions to both. Yeah.
So before Stefan answers, I think Stefan is, PPRO is an American, entity. So the European questions he may not be able to.
Same applies to America.
But no, I think coming back to technology, I think you have one big advantage, right? I think you can leapfrog some of the technology restrictions that are part of Europe and part of the States, right? This is what you're doing, right? And I fully agree. I'm fully with you that what you have built with UPI, right, and the infrastructure, I think it's hard to compare with some others, right? You know that Europe tries to build a digital euro, Europe tries to harmonize certain things, but it's super hard, right? Across the globe. So I was joking with investors because they was asking me, and is there any danger for your business model, right? So that there is standardization across the globe, right? And stuff is coming together. I said probably not in my lifetime, right? I don't see any standardization efforts right now between countries. I see the opposite, right? But from a technology point of view, I would fully agree with you that you have a leading edge from a technology point of view compared to what we're seeing as PPRO in some of these Western countries.
So instead of open banking, already NPCI developed so much thing that can be taken as a copy paste to Europe, America for a lot of process standard and many things. So instead of inventing new standards, and it is very difficult in fintech, small countries, small population, doing business is very challenging, 50 licenses. Yeah. So that NPCI standard, which we are as a technical partner doing in India easily, everybody, we should be allowed to work in America, especially America is more complicated than Europe to give market. They are only to take market. That should not happen.
So clearly, I think I'm much smaller than, or my influence is
not too often
much less than Ritesh with NPCI. But for sure, I think we're working with the regulatory bodies across the globe, particularly in Europe and the States, and trying to influence whatever it is. I think it's a coming together, right? It's crawl or run, it's step by step, right? And regulatory bodies have to get familiar with certain models, right? If they get familiar with certain models, if you stretch a bit, right? I think you can move the needle. Don't expect a jump, right? It will never happen with Europe and won't be happening with the US either, right? It has to be in small steps, and I believe collectively as an industry, I think we can drive this.
And I think if you draw comparisons between India, Europe, and America, I think Europe and America were always heavily carded markets. It's just that we have leapfrogged from cash directly to mobile-based payments, but they have not. So every market has unique challenges, and I think regulators are going to take a call looking at their own landscape, which I think is outside the remit of both of us sitting here. So thank you for your question, but anybody else, any questions, please? I think this is the last one we can take.
I think it's the last one. Yes.
This is the last one. Okay.
Stefan, interesting conversation. This is Krishna from Novati, based in Australia. Just a quick thing, how do you address the issue of chargebacks and merchant-related issues when it comes to cross-border, and because you're sitting in between two jurisdictions here? So you as a platform, how do you address that?
Correct. So this is actually part of our offering, right? For schemes that don't have a native chargeback, actually, I think we're creating chargeback functionality, right? So if you think about, and maybe I simplified what we're delivering as a platform, there are multiple things I think we're delivering underneath the platform. And for example, one of the things I think we're offering is a chargeback functionality for schemes that don't have it naturally, right? Because for sure you need it, right? So I think, as I mentioned earlier, there are lots of things that are underneath that drive complexity, from a chargeback, from funds flow handling, from moving money between countries, right? Where I mentioned that we have 450 bank accounts in 35 plus countries, right? So there's quite a complexity I think we're managing, but that's our job, right? So that's the value proposition of PPRO. And again, I think chargeback is something where we're supplementing schemes that don't have it naturally, so that e-commerce can work.
Thank you for the question, Krishnan, and I guess we are at the end of the conversation. Thank you so much, Stefan, for making the time. Really enjoyed the conversation, and I hope our friends in the audience enjoyed as well. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you so much, Ritesh and Stefan. We have a small gift of appreciation for Stefan. Ritesh, may please want to. Thank you so much.